listening to Blue Jays Nation Radio with Cam Lewis and Tyler Yaremchuk, a member of the Nation network of podcasts and delivered by DoorDash.
Episode 86 of Blue Jays Nation Radio, the only podcast that does not know which hand Shohei Ohtani throws with.
Yeah, we learned something new this weekend, which is that Shohei Ohtani is not a left-handed pitcher. So the Blue Jays now can't trade for him because he doesn't fill the need of left-handed pitcher in their rotation. He's a left-handed bat, which is fine. That helps. But no more right-handed pitchers. Can't make the trade.
No. Even if it's like whatever, just Grosjean's going the other way. You don't touch him. You need a lefty pitcher. And Ohtani's not that.
I wouldn't even do just Bradley Zimmer straight up, because we don't need another right-handed pitcher. I'd only do it for the left-handed pitcher. That's the only reason I wanted to do it.
If you're doing it in a deal, if it's Ohtani for Zimmer straight up, it's because you want Ohtani to fill Zimmer's like void. Like it's just like, hey, no, he's our defensive outfielder. He doesn't pitch. He's not. Yeah. Can you imagine if the Jays acquired Ohtani and we're like, he's done pitching. He's a hitter.
He's not even a hitter. He's a defensive replacement for the late innings and a base runner. And then they make him pitch left-handed to fulfill like our desire, but it's a lefty out of the bullpen.
Ah, there we go. Wouldn't
Very
that be
weird rule?
That's the next step, isn't it? Like Ohtani's here, second coming of Babe Ruth, the guy who's hitting and pitching. The next step is having like a left fielder who's also your closer. So like ninth inning, he runs in from left field instead of the bullpen. And just like we know when you play when you're like 12 years old, like, yeah, call him it. Yeah, come warm up. He gets 8 warm-up pitches. And then it's like, all right, he's good to go. He's our closer.
How would they do the rule because remember there was a while there in the National League when teams would bring in a reliever and then rather than taking them out of the game, they'd stash them in left field and bring in like a loogie to face a lefty or whatever, and then bring the pitcher back in. Would that be affected now by the 3-guy rule? So if a pitcher comes in, can you shift him back to left field and pitcher and back and forth between batters still? Because I always thought that was a great strategy. I always loved that personally, seeing a guy go and just stand in the outfield for one guy and then come back in. That's great.
Yeah, the Rays did it a little bit too, actually, right? Because they were like
the Rays were doing that.
They threw one of their pitchers like at third base, and I think maybe I'm misremembering, but I think there was even a clip where like the other team like bunted or like hit one to third base, and the guy had to like make a play.
Do you imagine you just have this like very good reliever who blows his arm out, making it like a barehanded play on the infield, or just throwing a cannon from left field against Tommy John, and then you're down just like a good reliever.
All because of nonsense. All right. We should stop putting off the fact that the Blue Jays had a series against the New York Yankees that they lost. Yes. And I mean, this was very close to being one of the more miserable podcasts we've ever done. Like they split a series against the Orioles, then had to go take on the best team in baseball, the New York Yankees, as much as we may not like to admit it. And game 1, they get the absolute piss beaten out of them. Game 2, they can't piss a drop offensively. And then finally in the series finale, they gave us a good moment.
Yeah, I think honestly, if you look at it big picture, like you and I came into this, I think mentally preparing ourselves for a sweep, right? Mm-hmm. That's kind of what we thought was going to happen.
We said if they didn't get swept, we'd consider it a win, I think, right?
Yeah, that's what we said. You win one game and that's a win. I think the game they did win makes it feel like the biggest win because now they get to, jump on a plane to Chicago and feel pretty good. Whereas if, you had to get on that airplane and go to a road series having just been swept by the Yankees. And the third game looked like it was going to be a rout as well. It looked like the Yankees are on their way to winning like 8-3 or something like that. And then they pull off the comeback. And that's a huge game changer. It shows the Yankees they're not unbeatable, though they are 48-16. Or sorry, no, they're 49-16. It's 49-17 now.
Okay.
So they're pretty much unbeatable, but it makes them feel like they're not a little bit, because otherwise they would have executed not just a 3-game sweep over the Jays, but a 6-game sweep over the Jays and Rays.
It really is, like, as much as it's nauseating to pump their tires, because they certainly don't need it. They're not likable in any way. No. But it is impressive to see what they've done here so far this season, like the record, the run differential, the teams they've been beating, the way they've been beating those teams. You mentioned they've taken 5 of their last 6 from the Jays and the Rays. Those are 2 teams who we thought would be right up there contending for this division lead. And it's really through no fault of the Jays or Rays that they aren't contending for a division lead. It's just that the Yankees have been head and shoulders above everyone else, not just in this division, but in the American League as a whole. Like if the Jays were in the AL Central with this record, they would be 1 game back of Minnesota. If the Jays were in the AL West with this record, they would be three games back
of Houston. Yeah,
Houston. Like they would be in the hunt for the other two divisions, and they're just not even close. Like it's not even something we're really discussing at this point, just because they're in the same division as the Yankees. But you're right. That third game, getting a win like that has you walking away from that series feeling good. And it has me wondering / hoping if maybe they can use this as a bit of a rallying point. If this kind of gets them going, I think this is a team that, as much as people may not want to believe that momentum carries over from game to game in professional sports or things like that, I think this Jays group, when they're confident, that plays a role in them being a good baseball team. I think when they get going and they're loose in the dugout and feeling good, I think it shows in their on-field play.
Yeah, definitely. And that's why it was key to pick up that win on Sunday, so that you're moving into now a 6-game road trip where you're playing the Chicago White Sox and Milwaukee Brewers, both of which they're pretty good teams. The White Sox are underachieving. I've said many times before, I think they're frauds, but they're fine. You know, you're going to go up against 3 good starting pitchers, and the same thing in Milwaukee. Like that's a solid team. That's a playoff team, one with good pitching. So you'd much rather the Jays go into that feeling good after hitting a grand slam and a 3-run home run to pull off a huge comeback against a team on pace to win like 129 games. They're going to be feeling good about it. They're going to be cocky as fuck rolling into Chicago. And like you said, that's what you want from the Jays. That's when they play their best, is either they're cocky as fuck or they're pissed off, one or the other.
Mm-hmm. So let's get into 3 up, 3 down then. And we're going to start with the up, I think, because, you know, that last game was definitely a bit of a vibe. There was a lot of good stuff going on. It starts with that Vladdy dinger, but our first up is going to be Lourdes Gurriel, who for the second straight season has hit a clutch grand slam. If you think back to that comeback victory over the Oakland A's last August, I believe it would have been. But Gurriel, I mean, again, we've talked about him and joked about it before. Like when he's hot, he's the key to this lineup. And that certainly came through. He goes 1 for 4. He hits a grand slam. He single-handedly put them back in that baseball game.
Yeah, I think that I'm trying to find the split on this for Gurriel, but I'm pretty sure he has like all-time good numbers with the bases loaded. Like the GOAT with the bases loaded is Pat Tabler, weirdly enough, like an all-time clutch hitter who had like a 500 batting average with the bases loaded, but Gurriel's like way up there. If there's ever a situation where you have the bases loaded and you want someone to come up on the Blue Jays, it's Gurriel, which is so funny because sometimes you'll see him just take like in situations where there's like a guy on second or something like that, he'll put together just the last at bat you want to see, just long swing, strikeout, this and that. But then all of a sudden the bases are loaded, everything just clicks in and you're like, this guy's a lock to either hit a bomb or hit a double. And it was just like when he came up with the bases loaded, it kind of seemed like, you know what? Yeah, like they're probably going to hit a grand slam here. And then he did. And then he flips the bat and it's like an all-time good bat flip. It was nice in that game, all told, like both teams were doing bat flips and neither team got pissy about it. It was nice to see that.
The only people who got pissy about it were Yankees fans on Twitter, which is still hilarious.
Of course. The funny thing about Yankees fans is they're having this season, but they're still spazzing out about shit online. Like there was that guy that I think it was after the Yankees won their second game on Saturday, maybe when they were winning on Sunday. I don't know, but he took a screenshot picture of Vladdy celebrating that win earlier in the season when he made a nice play at first base to get the final out of the game. And he's like, since the Blue Jays celebrated winning the World Series in April, the Jays have gone so-and-so, pretty good record. Meanwhile, the Yankees have gone like 40-10. It's like, dude, you're on pace for like a historically good season and you're worried about the Jays celebrating a win in April. What the fuck is wrong with you? How miserable are you people?
And it's also a little like pot calling the kettle black. Like I had no problem with really anything Josh Donaldson did in that baseball game. Like you want to freak out after getting hit by a pitch, like go ahead. I thought the funny part was John Schneider laughing at him from the bench. And then Josh Donaldson rightfully comes up the next day and pimps his home run. Like, yeah, man, you do that. Go right ahead. And I have no problem with it because I absolutely I've watched the Teoscar Hernandez home run 8 times because I think the bat flip is just a thing. It's a piece of art, man. I love that. So I just think it's weird how Yankees fans like, oh, when it's their guys doing it, it's like, oh yeah, like we're the Yankees. And then another team does it to them and they're like, oh my God.
Because they're still like super worked up about the home run jacket. There was one other post on Twitter where a guy showed and he's like, the Blue Jays hitting a home run versus the Yankees hitting a home run. The Blue Jays picture is them putting on the jacket and having fun. And the Yankees home runs just going to Giancarlo Stanton looking pissed off. It's like, okay. What?
So weird, man. I mean, the organization has a rule about like what kind of haircut you can get. So it shouldn't be surprising that their fans are just kind of
all-time bad vibes.
Yeah. So anyways, Gurriel is our first up because, I mean, the home run, like we're not sitting here having a even remotely close to a positive podcast if it's not for Lourdes Gurriel Jr. going deep in the sixth inning. The second up we have is the other man who ultimately came through and drove in the winning run, and that was Teoscar Hernandez, a guy who he's been struggling. Like this hasn't been a classic Teoscar Hernandez Silver Slugger All-Star game kind of year, right? He's batting .247 so far through 162 ABs, but he's starting to get going in the right direction. And I'm really, again, hoping that home run, much like I hope it sparks the entire team here for the next 2 weeks, I'm really hoping it sparks Teoscar Hernandez because he's a guy who can be frustrating when he's struggling. The strikeouts really, really go up. But when he's going, again, you talk about a guy like a Gurriel who's in the middle of this lineup and is just so important to this cycle for the Jays, their offensive cycle really getting going, right?
The challenge for Hernandez is the injury that he suffered is one that tends to nag for a long period of time. So he goes on the injured list early in the season and he misses just under a month with the oblique injury. And the thing with obliques is, that can go on for a good chunk of the season, if not the whole season. And he came back pretty quick given what the injury was. But after kind of a slow go in May where he kind of had a difficult time getting it together, through the month of June, he's done quite well. 329 batting average, 600 slugging percentage, OPS of 973, 4 dingers. The strikeout to walks aren't fantastic, 18-5, but that's who he is as a hitter. You see the power coming around. That's what you see in the 600 slugging percentage, and that's key. I mean, there isn't really much reason to worry about Teoscar at all. Like I saw some people being kind of like, oh, it's like he's gone back to what he was before he went down to Buffalo in 2019. No, he's obviously not, he hasn't suddenly just forgotten how to hit. It's a health and injury related thing. If he's obviously not at 100% right now, might not be for the entirety of the season, but he's showing during this stretch in June that he can put it behind him and be the hitter he was before.
Yeah, if people are like worried that he's all of a sudden going to be a replacement level player for the Blue Jays, no. I don't think you've been watching this team very long. And again, just really for me, it's about hoping this team can get going here and give us, kind of like they did, I guess, a month ago, but a 2-week run where they show that they're capable of being a top 10, top 5 team in baseball, right? I shouldn't say that. They are a top 10 team in baseball. They go on a run here where they show us they can be a top 5 team in baseball. And if you can go take care of business against the White Sox, you got the Brewers coming up on the weekend. But then if you can really sort of hit your peak for that 3-6 game run against the Rays and the Red Sox, that would be, an ideal time to hit your stride, Coombsy.
That'd be fantastic. It'd be nice to see them go on a big rip.
The third up we had is, again, we're sticking in that third game, man, because we're zeroing in on that moment of this series. But Jordan Romano coming in and giving this team 5 outs, and it wasn't exactly pretty. He had a walk, he gave up a hit, but he came through and gave them 5 huge outs. And you could tell how badly they wanted to win that game because they went to Romano for 5 outs.
Yeah, Jordan Romano came in with a big dick performance, and that's exactly what they needed because the bullpen did not look good. Like as soon as Kikuchi came out of the game, it was okay. We're going to have to clear like a lot of innings with not a lot of arms right now. And nobody really looked good. Like
Jimmy Garcia looked good.
Jimmy Garcia was fine. Yeah, you're right. But yeah, with him, it's always shaky. It's always a roller coaster. Things can go sideways so fast. Simber didn't look great either. Max Castillo comes in, makes his first big league debut, allows a couple of bombs, but Romano comes in, pulls off 5 outs against the Yankees. That's pretty impressive. I mean, the Yankees are a very, very, very good team with the bat. Like no one's an easy out on that team, even though you look at the roster and there's some guys where you're like, oh yeah, this guy should be an easy out, but they never are. And then he goes and strikes out 2. The Judge strikeout specifically that was exciting because you might remember Romano did have a blown save in which Judge blasted a walk-off 3-run home run off of him, and that ball was hit, 700 feet. So it was a little worrying seeing Judge come to the plate and being like, oh, fuck, this could happen again. And Yankees fans were all posting like, oh, yeah, Judge versus Romano last time. So it was great to see Romano kind of get that strikeout of Judge. I think that's important. But also one interesting thing to note is we haven't seen much Jordan Romano recently. Like this was the first really like high pressure save situation I can remember him being in like a few weeks, because over the month of June, he's only pitched on June 7th, a huge win against Kansas City. Just kind of a get in there game, and then doesn't pitch again until June the 12th against Detroit. That's again a nothing game. And then he got into the Baltimore game, the one they won 7-6 with the Vladdy walk-off. And then it's Sunday's game, 19. So he's only pitched 4 times in June.
And so we're on June 20th now. So, I mean, but to be fair, we did bitch about his workload earlier in the season. Oh, yeah. So it is nice that he's getting a bit of a break. But again, much like I talked about Gurriel getting going, Hernandez getting going, it would be nice if over the course of the next 10 days here, we get 6 good Jordan Romano outings, because he should be rested and it should be something his body's ready to do. Right.
Yeah. I think the point that I'm slowly getting at here, very much so rambling, but the point that I'm getting at is it's kind of nice that he had that little chill stretch in June and then still shows out of that. Like, okay, like the Blue Jays still have an elite closer. The Jays have a guy that can come in and record 5 outs against the Yankees and pick up a win. That's nice to see.
Yeah, it is. And again, if we're going to transition this into the downs, this team needs to get a bullpen arm. I mean, I should almost go back and cut up different segments of the podcast from a year ago today, because it'd be a similar conversation, but also our podcast from like 6 weeks ago when the offense wasn't going, but the bullpen looked great. And we were like, oh my God.
Last year? Literally like 1 year ago today when we were talking, the Jays were just blowing leads nonstop. Like it's the same story, man. Like I thought starting pitcher was their number one need. I don't know. Maybe it's the bullpen. Maybe.
Yeah. And if you think Nate Pearson is going to be a solution, he's not. Nope. Pearson threw, 2 pitches in his rehab game in Buffalo and walked off the field with the trainer. We don't know anything about the injury, so I shouldn't even really throw this out there. But there's a part of me that's like, are we ever going to see him pitch for the Jays, or is this going to be a guy that they just sell off at the deadline to get a reliever and cut losses with?
Yeah, it's honestly really hard to say. Like he's on the 60-day injured list right now, so he's not a roster spot. But this almost seems to be coming like a Dustin McGowan situation, where you're like, you know what, when this guy's healthy, he's going to be so good, and he just isn't. Just isn't healthy. It just doesn't really happen. And it sucks. It's really sad because I don't know. He's such an electric arm. He could be so good. You see it. Like we've seen instances in the big league where Nate Pearson pitches and he looks phenomenal. And I think we've probably all let go of the idea of him being a starter, let alone like a top end starter. But I think now we're kind of all like, you know what, he can be a good bullpen arm. So the expectations are very tamed. But even then, it's hard to imagine him putting together a fully healthy season. And that's why personally, I at no point really this season have I viewed Nate Pearson as the solution to really any problem. They're going to have to go out and trade for bullpen arms to make their bullpen better, starter to make their rotation better. That's just how it is.
Yeah. And it's a shame because we had those fantasies, those visions of him being an Aaron Sanchez type for this team over the course of a playoff run, right? Where he can be a reliable out of the bullpen fireballer. And it's just right now, it's hard to envision a scenario where even 8 weeks from now, if we get into end of August, I just can't see Pearson being that guy. I hope I'm wrong, but it's hard to imagine that. Let's get into the down segment of 3 up, 3 down. And we're going to start with game 1, which was just ugly from the jump. The Jays lose the game 12-3, just a ton of home runs. It was the Yankees doing their thing. Not great. I mean, just ugh.
That was a game where you could just see how good the Yankees actually are. I thought Ross Stripling pitched quite well. I thought he was putting his pitches in good spots. They were, moving and breaking. He looked very effective. He looked like he was pitching largely how he had pitched in those 2 previous starts where he only scattered 2 hits over 11 innings or whatever it was. And he only winds up going 3 2/3, allows 2 earned runs and 5 hits and 2 walks. And it's just man, the Yankees lineup is a gauntlet. And then, they come in and face the back end of Toronto's bullpen, Trent Thornton. Trevor Richards has completely fallen off a cliff.
Yeah, which I did not see coming this year. He was so reliable for them last season. And I don't know, it just feels like every time he comes in, he's getting lit up, man.
Yeah, I'd say he's on the injured list right now with, it's funny he goes on with a neck injury because everybody made the joke that his neck got whiplash from watching all the balls sail to the park. But he's honestly given what we've seen from the bullpen right now, I can't think of too many guys that I'd want to see out there less in a key situation than Richards. And that's unfortunate because he was really good last year. I'd rather see Trent Thornton used in a high leverage spot.
But even that, Like, and I get that he bounced back and he went 2 innings in the second game and looked good. But like, remember a month ago and we were like, wow, even Trent Thornton's being a good part of this bullpen. Who would have saw this coming? And now he's just like getting his shit lit up again. Gives up 5 runs.
We can't let Trent Thornton fool us. Every once in a while, he'll go 8 consecutive innings over 4 outings and not allow a hit. And we're like, holy shit, this guy's legit. And then you realize, okay, never mind. It was against Kansas City and Detroit. Let's calm down.
Yeah, not good. So that just a mess in the first game. You ball it up, throw it out. In the second game, it was an ump show. But yeah. I just want to talk about how much I love the quick moment where Montoyo's going out to argue with the first base ump, and Montoyo crosses his arms to kind of like mock him and do like the like, oh yeah, tough guy. Like I can cross my arms too. I just think that was so good, man.
Yeah, it's fun seeing Charlie become like very fiery this season. He's been kicked out of 4 games now. What he got kicked out for this time was embarrassing. Like the Yankees hitter just completely goes around, does a full swing, gets hit. And they just give him first base. And Montoyo just comes out and he's like, what the fuck is that? Like you just called the wrong thing. That's not even close to right. What are you doing? And he gets booted for that, which I think is some bullshit. But it's good to see him going out and defending his guys though. Because I remember that was something he got criticized so much for in those first few seasons. They're like, oh man, this manager is so like laid back and doesn't give a fuck. Like they need someone to go out there and spaz. And I agree. I personally love when a manager goes out and spazzes out. I don't know if it really matters. I think it does. I think it makes a difference. I think the players like that. I think they like seeing it. I think they'd be pissed off if he didn't, in that situation, didn't go out and get the boot. Like I think Alek Manoah, if you're him and your manager doesn't come out and stand up for you in that situation, I think you feel kind of shitty about it.
Yeah.
So it's nice seeing Charlie do that.
Yeah, it was good.
Positive.
The third down is, and this probably ties into what we're talking about next, which is trade targets. But Kikuchi,
yeah,
they gave this guy 3 years. Who?
Yeah, it's turned into. I don't know if I want to say it just yet, but it's eerily similar to Tanner Rourke's situation with the $12 million annual salary. He's supposed to be a 4 or 5 guy, reliable arm, but man, he just looks, there was a period there where he looked quite good and he was getting the job done. But now it's just like, man, like, why don't you throw your fastball and just throw it for a strike? But then the worry is, okay, if this guy chucks his fastball, it's just going to get launched out of the park. So who knows what you do with Kikuchi, but it's kind of gotten to a point now where the idea of seeing this guy pitch in a key game in September is very off-putting. So it
Not
seems
good.
They kind of have 2 open spots in the rotation you'd like to see them deal with.
I think it was our boy Brennan Delaney who has like the little meter for Kikuchi, where it's like Ray's on the left side in the good part and Rourke's on the right side in the bad part. And lately it's been more on the Rourke side of that meter for Kikuchi.
It has.
And like that's just, again, it feels like the Rourke thing where like you bring in this guy, you give him the years, you give him the money and you go, okay, we've solidified the back end of our rotation. You know, your 5th guy pitches more or less just as much as your 1st and 2nd guys. It's important to shore that up and have like stability back there. And you pay a premium to get a guy like Kikuchi to fill that hole for you. And it just has not gone that way at all.
When you watch Kikuchi pitch now, there's something that exists in the back of the mind. You saw the Justin Verlander thing, right?
Oh my God, don't even go here.
Yeah. So Justin Verlander, there's a big feature on him at ESPN and they're talking about, he's got like a sub-2 ERA at the age of 39 after missing basically 2 full years with Tommy John. He comes back now and he's just killing it. He looks as good as he ever has in his career. And he says in this post, the Astros were the number 1. He'd like to stay where he was, but they disappeared for a bit and they didn't seem to be in the mix at the beginning of free agency. And at that time, the Blue Jays were his top choice. And the other team pushing were the Yankees, and he wasn't particularly interested in joining the Yankees for whatever reason. So the Blue Jays and Astros made the exact same offer for Verlander, and he winds up in Houston. And you got to think now, okay, you gave $36 million to Kikuchi. Maybe you should have just given all that to Verlander for 1 year.
$36 million to Verlander and just roll with it. Yeah.
Would have been. It's hard to say though. Yeah. Like maybe if they had signed Verlander, there's no Gosman.
Yeah, that's where I was going to go with that. It's like hindsight 2020. Yeah, if you could right now give $36 million to Verlander instead of the 3-year deal to Kikuchi, it's a no-brainer. But in the moment, the trickle-down effect of getting Verlander may have led to some other decisions being made, and that always makes you wonder. We hit on the Pearson injury already. they need a bullpen arm, Cam. And Jim Bowden at The Athletic has his first kind of deadline trade targets piece out. He has 125 names on there. That's insane.
Oh, yes.
We're not going to get through all of those, but I want to start with the starting pitchers he has on this list. And there's a total of 20 of them. I think, there's a part of us that would like to see them go out and add a lefty arm, right? So
that'd be ideal.
So if you're looking at the lefty arms on his list, at the top is, and they're in no order, I guess it's just in alphabetical order, but Madison Bumgarner, you got Kyle Freeland of the Rockies, and that's pretty much it. Wade Miley, Mike Minor, and Jose Quintana, Drew Smiley. That's your crew.
Martin Perez as well for the Rangers.
Sorry, Martin
who's
Perez.
Been shockingly good.
So when you look at that crew of lefties that's listed there, obviously the sexiest name of the bunch is Bumgarner because of what he's done in the playoffs, but I'm not touching that money. Like as interesting as the name is, like, no, you're not paying, or even if they keep that much money, that's probably a non-starter. Which one of those jumps off the page to you though?
It was actually Bumgarner for me because
Really?
the money's so messed up that maybe you could get Arizona to give you something to take the money off their books, because they're a pretty cheap organization, right? They're not an LA Dodgers or someone who's going to swallow that money. So, maybe that's possible. But I mean, I don't know. Bumgarner at this stage in his career kind of sucks. He was signed in the same offseason as Hyunjin Ryu, and just about every pitching contract handed out in that group, save for Zach Wheeler's and potentially Garrett Cole's, has kind of gone sideways. I think at this point, you kind of just wait and see about a month from now which one of these kind of rando guys is performing well. Like, is Martin Perez has a 2.18 ERA pitching for the Rangers all of a sudden? Completely random. Like, Jose Quintana has been good this year too. He has been bad for like 5 years, and now all of a sudden he's good. And it's like, okay, are these guys going to continue being good into July? And I think you just kind of wait and see. And then maybe what makes the most sense is which one of these teams is also willing to give up like a left-handed bat that gets on base, and you kind of do two birds, one stone. Like last year it was Adam Simber and Corey Dickerson filled the two needs together, and you look to make kind of a bigger deal. I think that probably makes the most sense.
Yeah. And I mean, the Jays gave up a lot in that Simber Dickerson deal, right?
Yeah, they gave up Joe Panic and somebody who was ranked, I don't know, number 93 on their farm list. A name that neither of us could pull off the top of our heads. And if you do know the name of the player in this trade, then that's impressive. You're a real Blue Jays prospects guy or gal.
Bumgarner, I don't know. Like, I do agree that you wait and see a little bit on the starter. Like a bullpen arm, I want them to go get yesterday. Like, why don't waste time? Like, go get that. That is actively it's going to cost you some wins in the next 40 days up until the deadline if you don't just go solve it quickly. With the pitcher, I do think you can kind of wait a little bit, just because it's a need, but it's not on the same level as a bullpen, in my opinion. Like, you still have three good starters, right? Mm-hmm. Stripling's pitching well, so
Stripling's done well too. Yeah, so it's like 3.5.
Yeah, you have 3.5, three real reliable ones, and one guy who's putting together good starts and who you're not taking out of the rotation right now. So you can find a way to keep making that work over the next 40 days, because having one weak spot in Kikuchi, could it cost you some games? Yeah, but you're hoping you can overcome a few of them. Yeah, and they just won with them. So you're hoping you can overcome
your way into them with Kikuchi on the mound. It's possible. Exactly. There's actually there's some pretty funny bullpen names on this list. I'm just looking. Anthony Bass, Blue Jays legend. Oof. He's got a 2.08 ERA for the Marlins. Another funny one, Carl Edwards Jr., another Blue Jays legend. He was on the team last year. Was really bad. He has a 3.44 ERA. Over the course of 18 innings for the Washington Nationals. Jeff Hoffman, who was part of the Troy Tulowitzki trade, is now a not particularly good reliever for the Cincinnati Reds. Danny Jimenez in Oakland is their closer, and he was doing very well, but now it seems he's fallen off a cliff a bit. That guy, I think, went back and forth from the Blue Jays to Athletics organization like 6 times. And then let's see, I think there was another former Blue Jay in here somewhere. No, that's all of them. So 4 from our Blue Jays there that we could possibly do a round 2 on.
The bullpen arm, yeah, I want to see him go get it. You can go get 2 of them for all I care. Get 3, get 4 of them. Rebuild the whole damn bullpen. I don't care at this point. I mentioned Gregory Soto on the last episode of the podcast, and he is on this list, but the breakdown of it was that it would take a significant prospect with all-star potential to land Soto. He's got a 1.96 ERA in 24 appearances with saves in 13 of 14 opportunities. He's a legit impact arm. I wonder, like, when it comes to getting bullpen arms, especially with what we've seen from this team, like last year, you didn't have to give up that much to get Richards and Simber, and they came in and they were impactful, right? I know Rowdy Tellez is now like great with the Brewers, but I mean, at the time you didn't have to give up much. I worry that sometimes going and making the big splash for the bullpen arm feels like a risk that's not worth taking, and smart front offices find a way to just pluck the fringe guys and pluck the right fringe guys. No?
I don't think, I can't remember a time in which this front office has pulled the trigger on a big trade for a reliever. Like, there's the Rowdy Tellez Richards things. Yeah, it looks bad now, but last year Tellez was just a guy who couldn't hang on, needed to change of scenery. Like we talked about a minute ago, they gave up nothing for Simber. And then there was the other two acquisitions. That was Joakim Soria. I don't even know who went in return for Joakim Soria, and it was Brad Hand. And that was, what was it? The catcher? Was it Patrick Murphy? I can't remember. It was a player on the edge of the 49 roster. So it wasn't.
Oh no, it was Riley Adams.
Riley Adams. Yeah, the only reliever, and I use reliever on quotes, that they've gone to acquire, that they've given up a lot to get, was Ross Stripling. They gave up Ryan Noda and Kendall Williams, who was a second round pick, which is a pretty hefty price to pay, but you're essentially paying for a starter. That's what Stripling is.
Yeah.
They've never done it otherwise. So I mean, I don't really see them doing it. I think if they're going to pay, they're going to go and pay for a starter. I think they know that that's where the value is.
Yeah. Someone who can give you 6 innings every 5 days. And it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. Obviously, we'll have a ton of deadline talk here as we lead up closer to the trade deadline. Coming up next year for the Jays, you talked about it earlier. It is a series against the Chicago White Sox. And the White Sox, a bit of an up and down year in a weird way. They are 5-5 in their last 10. Things went well for a bit, but then they got really, really ugly for the Chi Sox. There's been issues in their dugout, most recently with Lance Lynn. We saw the Jays play them not too long ago as well. And that was a good series for the Jays. Obviously, you walk through there, they swept them beginning of the month / end of May. Here's to hoping for more of that, even though you're on the road. Yeah,
the White Sox have a good starting rotation. You're going to see Lance Lynn. He just made his first start of the year and went 4 1/3 and allowed 3 runs on 10 hits. So that was kind of ugly, but he's a good pitcher. You could see him potentially bouncing back. And then it's Dylan Cease, who we didn't see in Toronto because he was one of the unvaccinated players. And then Lucas Giolito has been pretty much their ace this year. He's been really quite. Oh wait, no, he's actually fallen off. It was the start against the Jays, I think, that kind of knocked him off, because when he came into that start, I remember writing about it. He had like a 2-something ERA. Yeah, here it is. So, oh wow. Before the start against the Jays, his ERA across 7 starts was 2.63. Since then, and including the Jays game where they scored 6 runs off of him, his ERA has ballooned all the way up to, in that stretch, it's 8.71. So his ERA for the season now is up to 4.78. It seems the Jays broke Lucas Giolito. So maybe this series isn't that bad in terms of opposing starting pitching.
Yeah, Lynn is probably one of those guys who's just looking to get into form right now. You mentioned his first start of the season was not great. It was not the near Cy Young winner that he was last season.
No.
So it'll be interesting. The Jays are going with Barrios tonight. They are favorites, courtesy of our friends over at PointsBet Canada, live in Ontario, by the way. They come in at -125 on the money line, +130 on the run line. Again, hoping for some positive momentum here. It's tough to go out on the road against a team that, is pretty much 500, which the White Sox are. They're 2 games under right now. It's tough to go out and be like, oh, they're sweeping them. I'm hoping for that, because I'm hoping the Jays can roll the positive momentum from a big emotional win on Sunday and into a nice little run here. But 2 of 3, right? This is a 2 of 3 for us.
Yeah, 2 out of 3 and bad. That's how I kind of feel about both these series. You're playing the White Sox and the Brewers. The Brewers are 38-30. The White Sox are 31-33, but are underachieving. They have more skill than that. Yeah. You're happy with 4 out of 6 from these games here.
Still no Tim Anderson for the White Sox, right?
The last I saw, Tim Anderson was still on the injured list. So unless something's changed today.
I'm just reading here on their website. Tim Anderson will play Monday. All right.
Okay, so he's back right away. That's a nice boost for them offensively, but the rest of their lineup is doing sweet fuck all.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting here. It's 8:00 Eastern start, so a little bit later this weekend, but Wednesday is an afternoon game. So I think maybe we could try to.
Ooh, cursed.
Yeah, cursed.
Midweek afternoon game, man. That's why we can't call it a sweep. It's not going to happen. They're playing a fucking afternoon game in the middle of the week. They're going to lose that game 8-2.
And the wheels are going to fall off for Ross Stripling. Yeah, that's worrisome, Cam.
No, like he'll do like 4 innings, 1 earned run, and then like Trent Thornton will come in and allow 12 runs or something.
They won't pull him. They'll say, no, you're staying. You're getting us out of this fucking inning, Trent.
Shirley just leaves him out there for the rest of the game.
All right. Coombsy, this was good as always. This has been episode 86 of BJN Radio, presented by our friends at DoorDash. Promo code BJNPodDD gets first time users of that app 25% off and no delivery fees. Coombsy, we will talk again on Wednesday.
Best wishes.
Thanks for tuning in to Blue Jays Nation Radio, a member of the Nation network of podcasts and delivered by DoorDash. Don't forget to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts from to never miss an episode.